Hello, US 101 CCAP class. This is our last week that we finished up with this semester, and now this week on Thursday of this week, by Thursday. So you have the option of turning it in before the final will be due, but it'll be due no later than Thursday by midnight. I'm going to talk quite a bit more about some things I want you to think about or understand about the final. Um, but first, I'm going to do a little summary of everything that we just learned this week and kind of finish my final thoughts on um, just the semester. And like I said, then we'll just move on to the important things that I know you all want to know. It's how do we finish up this whole thing? All right. So we did Reconstruction, and I'm already looking in many of the discussions. I haven't put a lot of feedback yet because I think a lot of folks are overwhelmed with finals, and I'm not going to see a lot of work until later this evening by the deadline. But we covered a lot, right? And the reason why I had you watch this awful film and learn much about the birth of the nation is because, one of the reasons is, first of all, when I was in college, I always read about this infamous film, and but it was never something that I'd ever even saw a clip of. For the most part, keep in mind, before the internet and the wider availability of documentaries and old films and those kind of things being able to be put on the internet, um, you wouldn't have access of watching a film like this. So when I went to UCSC uh, and was a history major there, you know, over a decade or two ago, um, to watch any kind of famous film, whether that had a good reputation or a bad reputation, there were some other old Soviet films that I read about. Uh, how would I be able to have access to watch those? They had a vast library of old films, and so I went into the basement of the library to watch this film. Anyhow, so now we have more access to these things, and I thought it was important because it shows several things. First of all, I know a lot of you are shocked how long it is and how slow, aside from the content. But this is the beginning of a broader media used to be able to translate ideas to the world. So it's not just something artistically for making films, but here, the birth of the nation, from the beginning, not long after the end of the US Civil War, was used to shape a very different perspective to the broader American public as to what to make of the US Civil War. And even though the South lost, after very much clearly stating that they were separating for the safety of the protection of their institution of slavery, they really wanted to pitch something different about the whole thing. So this film was able to sort of like almost gaslight the entire American population as to a lot of things regarding the U.S. Civil War, and it explains also one of the many factors of why we have such a poor understanding of the U.S. Civil War in this country, even though it's not that long ago. And I think a lot of you also saw that too with the woman who, during your own lifetime, was married to, living in the house with somebody who actually fought in the U.S. Civil War. And those circumstances were also very complicated, right? How young she was, how old the man was. But the main reason why I wanted you to look at that link is just for it to really make it very clear to you all. And I think a lot of you got that, as I saw in the discussions, that this is recent enough in our history that it was possible for you all to be alive during a time with somebody that knew somebody who fought in the Civil War and lived with them. Okay, so that kind of really shows the distance of this history to now isn't as great as it may feel. to us. And so I thought that was really important for all of us to kind of walk away from the classroom, right? And I saw a lot, just your feedback that you all had in the discussions, the ones that so far have contributed, really seemed to get a lot of the main points that I wanted you to draw from, uh, um, this from this time period. Okay, so having said that, I know a lot of you are impatiently trying to let's get to the gist of the final, right? So look, there's several things I want to say about this. It's 25 points. That's not a lot of points, but it can make or break people on the cusp. I never encourage students not to do an exam. But if you don't do it, it doesn't hurt my feelings. I also do not help students figure out if they can afford not to take the exam. So let me put it another way. I have some students that have strong A's, and from time to time and on my semesters, they'll choose not to take the exam because it won't change their grade. They're solid. Or let's say that they have a grade that's a B, and they know that if they take the exam and get full points, it won't make it higher than a B. They choose not to do the exam. Now, on Canvas, you can put your hypothetical points into the exam section, and it can tell you whether or not it'll show you the hypothetical grade you'll have with a certain amount of points that you put in there from 0 to the total. So sometimes students just write to me. They'll go to the assignment, the final, and they'll say, Mr. Pollock, I've looked over my grade and I'm not going to take the exam. And I say, okay, well, all right, thanks for letting me know. And we're done. For the most part, I set this class up that you made most of your points by showing up and doing this amount of work every week that you were doing. Okay. Now, again, sometimes having full points for the final, though, is going to help tip you from a B to an A or a C to a B and so on. Ultimately, that's something that you explore personally. Again, do not write to me and ask me, can you afford not to take this exam, or what your grade would be. I don't figure out all of your folks' grades. Like, I have too many students. So I'm going to take all the material, you're going to have the work that you turn in for this final week, and I'll do your exam grade, and then we'll know your grade. So remember, the percentages are out there. 100 to 90% is an A, 89 to 80% is a B, and 79 to 70% is a C, 69 to 60% is a D, 59% to 0 is an F. That's it. Now, also, make sure you look at your grade, and when you look from the beginning to the end, make sure that there's a grade in everything that we did. Now, remember also that don't worry about any assignments if they're on the grade book and they weren't covered in our module. So, in other words, from the first assignment in the module to the last assignment that I assigned in the module, is everything graded? Okay. And then you're going to see what your grade is, and as long as you're happy with it, that's fine. What I want you to do is make sure immediately contact me if you feel like I didn't grade something, I didn't grade it correctly, you have an issue with your grade. This is the week that you need to contact me as soon as possible to make sure that we can talk through it, and write to me through Canvas directly. Okay? So that's it. I enjoyed having you all, and I hope you learned a lot. Have a great holiday season, and we'll be in touch. In any case, I'm still also going to be grading a lot of your works this last final week. So good luck to all of us in that as well.